So guys, it seems we are stuck with Sergio Perez for another year. He's been telling us, I guess, quite adamantly recently that he has a contract to the end of 2025. The memes of "I am not leaving," but did any of us truly believe that he wasn't going to be gone by the end of the year with the performances he puts in? But this is the thing with F1. Performances sometimes aren't the be all and end all, because it depends on what you want from a driver. Do you want a driver that your number one driver, i.e. Max Verstappen, can be comfortably and keep happy? Do you want a driver that doesn't get you winning the Constructors' Championship, doesn't even get you in the top two, so that you're able to secure more wind tunnel time for the following year, and maybe even for 2026 with the brand new regs coming in? Very, very important year next year for development of the new regulations. And also a driver that brings in a shed load of cash. Yes, guys, money makes the world go round, and it most definitely makes cars go round a circuit multiple times. Because yes, money rules F1, surprise, surprise. Now, Sergio Perez, we already know, brings in a shed load of cash for Red Bull in the form of sponsors. Now, he is what you call a modern day paid driver. The paid driver of old has gone, where they just chuck a load of cash at a team and it goes directly into their bank account and they've bought their seat. That's long gone now. The new form of paid driver is that they bring sponsorships. They bring back in the form of sponsorships. So it looks like it's a bit more legitimate. Because Sergio Perez, according to Massa, his sponsors pay his $10 million salary. Now, his sponsors are a couple of companies that are owned by Carlos Slim, Mexican billionaire, famously Sergio Perez's biggest backer. He has a brokerage firm in Mexico who is also a backer of his as well, who have sponsored a number of events in F1 previously. And they coincidentally have ties with Nestle, who own Kit Kat, who is also a personal sponsor of Sergio Perez, which has now become the official chocolate bar of F1. Very weird partnership there, with of course Sergio Perez being front and center of that advert today, since it's been announced. So lots of money that he brings in. They pay his wage, and they also bring in an additional rumored $30 million with them to Red Bull. So that is a lot of money to turn down, even at Red Bull's size at the end of the day. And who knows where that money is distributed? Does it go in people's back pockets? Does it go back into the team or whatever? Does it go into shareholders' dividends? You know, so it's the famous quote of all corporate businesses, we have an obligation to our shareholders. It's one of the worst things out there, and this is kind of a worry of mine as well, and a theory of mine is that really I think Sergio Perez, this is all but confirmed now that he's in that seat for his money. I think he retained his seat in the middle of the season because of money. Whether they got more money, my theory, and there's no substantiation to back this up, it is purely just assumption, that Carlos Slim or his sponsors basically gave more money to Red Bull to keep him in that seat in the middle of the year, potentially offsetting the loss from finishing first in the Constructors to third, which is a £12 million difference, I believe it is. And that's pocket change to a lot of them, especially a billionaire like Carlos Slim. But is that the case? I don't know. As I said, pure assumption. But even so, next season, they could potentially get more wind tunnel time. They're going to get more wind tunnel time for next season. And of course, Red Bull have had that hit with the cost cap penalty with reduction in wind tunnel time. And maybe they've sat back and gone, for the betterment of the team in the future, with a new regulation set coming up, we keep Sergio Perez until the end of his contract. That means that there's a high possibility that we don't get into the top two, maybe the top three of the constructor standings. And well, Brad Vasseur has even come out and stated it today in an article that he is potentially worried that teams, if they get halfway through the season, realise that they're not in the running to win the constructors, and they'll just basically not try that hard so that they can get more wind tunnel time, finish further down the pack in the constructors standings, and yeah, get that extra development time. But it's going to be very, very key for the following season with a new regulation set, and try and get that head start that Red Bull did themselves at the start of this regulation set. So of course Red Bull want to hit the ground running again, not only just because of their own aspirations, but importantly to keep Max Verstappen as well. If rumours are to be believed, Max has a performance clause in his contract where if they're not performing well, then at a certain stage of the season, Max can get out of his contract. So yeah, number of reasons I think. End of the day, unfortunately, we do not always see the best drivers on the grid in F1, Lance Stroll being an example, because of money. So Sergio Perez is definitely there for that reason with the sponsorship that he brings in. Of course, we already know that there was rumours circulating. Maybe Formula One management they pushed to keep Sergio Perez in Red Bull, or spoke to Horner about keeping him in there because of the support they get from the Mexican Grand Prix and the Mexican fans. And speaking of merchandise, well, another element here of which is kind of indicating in this publication that Sergio Perez is staying is that Massa have reported that his new merchandise has been put into production by Red Bull. So this any production line manufacturing wise has to be done, of course, in advance, months in advance of it being released. So his 2025 merch is already being created right now as we're approaching the end of the season, and that's a pretty good indication that he's not going to have his contract cancelled at the end of the year, because why would you do that? Why would you put all of that merchandise into production and then it not be used? If you're just going to get rid of that driver, it's just throwing money away. So that's always a clear indication. And yeah, it's a real shame for Colapinto and Lawson or Yuki Tsunoda. Now, Yuki technically has a contract for next year, but no doubt maybe Red Bull have some provisions in there to protect themselves and maybe get rid of Yuki early. We know how kind of the merry-go-round of the junior team, whether it's a junior team now or not, I don't know, for quite some time. But we could have a potential... one of them out of Yuki, Lawson or Colapinto isn't going to be on the grid next season. Now, Red Bull, of course, are trying to acquire Colapinto services, and that kind of makes sense now because Sergio Perez brings in, let's say he brings in 30 million as it is reported that he does to Red Bull. Is Lawson going to fill that hole of Sergio Perez? Is Tsunoda going to fill that hole? He's backed by Honda. Will Honda be willing to pay 30 million to keep Yuki in there, especially when they're moving to a partnership with Aston Martin? Why would they pay 30 million to have to Red Bull, where that partnership's now coming to an end? And Liam Lawson, I assume, doesn't have that sort of backing either, which is a real shame because Liam Lawson is a tremendous driver, and I think he's done everything that he needs to do. And it will look so bad on F1 if, in particular, I think Liam Lawson doesn't get a seat, because he has done, I think, what he's needed to do in the limited time he's had in F1 to prove himself, similar to Colapinto, really. I think he's actually proved himself more than Colapinto, to be honest with you. As brilliant and as breath of fresh air Colapinto has been, I think Lawson has been better, just because of how the circumstances that he's had to come in. He hasn't had this long run, knowing he's got 9 races ahead of him. He had that short run at the end of 2023, and then he's got 5 races to prove himself at the end of this season as well. But there's so much pressure on him, whereas Colapinto's, yeah, there's pressure, but he always knew very unlikely he was going to have a seat for next season. And he's attracted the correct people to back him and to potentially get him into a top seat. But yeah, looks like we're stuck with Checo for another year, and he's going to block up a seat just like Lance Stroll is. And it's a real shame, considering we have limited spaces on this 20 grid. We want the best drivers, and I think we can all unanimously agree, even if you're a Perez fan, he is not one of the top 20 drivers in the world, is he, to warrant a seat, let alone in one of the top teams. But hey, I'm not Christian Horner. I'm not. Maybe I don't want a top second driver. Maybe I want the extra wind tunnel time. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you happy Sergio Perez is going to be staying for another year? Of course, who knows? Maybe there'll be another complete U-turn and Perez will not have his contract renewed at the end of the year. But this is a man who just seems to just stay no matter what. And yeah, I think this publication, if he has got big new sponsors, yet to see who they are, I think, yeah, unfortunately, money talks this time around.